Chapter 5. The sunlight peeking in my window woke me the next morning. Yawning, I stretched out my stiff muscles and did a double take at my watch. Nearly noon? I guess jet lag does mess you up. This trip was my first out of the continental United States, and I'd had no idea how tired the flight over would make me. I never slept past 8 a.m., unless I was sick or drunk. I cringed as the night with Brent blazed in my memory again. Pushing it away, I plodded out of bed and into the bathroom. After turning on the water in the tub, I slipped off my dress and stepped into the bathtub, letting the warm water energize me. When I felt thoroughly refreshed and washed, I toweled off, and wrapping the white fluffy towel like a sarong around my chest, traipsed back into the main room to pick today's outfit. I wanted something comfortable, but also eye-catching, so I grabbed a green tank that brought out my eyes and a pair of shorts. After slipping them on, I ran a quick brush through my dark hair and grabbed my sunglasses. It was time to check out what the rest of this island had to offer. The hotel itself was gorgeous, but very much like other hotels I had been to. A spa, a gift shop, and a few small restaurants sat on the premises, but not much else, so I headed out of the hotel to the village outside. The sun beat down, sending small beads of sweat trickling down my back as I traversed the walkway. I needed a hat or a fan, something to keep the blazing sun off my head. As small shops straddled the quaint street, I approached one that was laden with clothing and began to search through the wares. Dresses, skirts, and tops filled the tiny shop, and a dark-skinned woman sat on a stool, eyeing me and fanning herself. My hand landed on a beautiful green, blue, and red maxi skirt that called my name, and I handed it to the lady to wrap up for me. I added a straw hat before leaving and was just about to place the hat on my head when I saw a man braiding hair a few feet ahead. I'd often pictured a braid in my hair whenever I thought of myself lounging on a beach, so I tucked the hat in the bag for now and sidled up to his stand. He was just finishing a braid on the current customer, his skilled hands deftly weaving the hair back and forth. "How much to do one small braid in the front of my hair?" I asked, pointing to the front right side. The dark man smiled at me as he wrapped a small rubber band around the bottom of the woman's braid. "For you, pretty lady, I take $10. The lady thanked him and smiled at me as she vacated the chair, and I handed over the $10 bill I had just fished from my purse. I couldn't believe I was actually letting a stranger run his fingers through my hair, but I had to admit the feeling was rather nice. "Blending in, are you?" I glanced out of the corner of my eye to see the handsome bartender from the previous night. My heart fluttered in my chest. He looked just as handsome today in cargo shorts and a green t-shirt. Yeah. I figured I should try some of the local culture. Why did I lose the ability to speak coherently around this man? "Well, Sammy here is the best braider around, so you are in good hands." He clapped a hand on the shoulder of the man and flashed another charming smile. My pulse drummed in my ears. What was it about this guy? Why did he have such an effect on me? "Are you not working at the bar today?" I hoped the question sounded nonchalant, though I feared my attraction to him was showing through. His head tilted as he regarded me, his eyes twinkling. "I don't work here. I was covering a shift last night for a friend." Something in the way he answered led me to believe there was more to that story, but as he didn't seem inclined to share, I decided not to push. "What do you do then?" I asked, finally recovering the ability to string intelligible words together. "I manage a few companies back in the States." "Are you vacationing then?" "I guess you could say that." The twinkle in his eye was so distracting, as was his uncanny ability to give vague answers to my questions. "Listen, do you want to get some lunch after Sammy finishes your hair? I'd like to show you a fantastic local eatery." Yes. My heart flip-flopped and my pulse revved, accelerating in my chest, but I took a deep breath to regain control. "I don't even know your name." I glanced up at him and Sammy smirked. "It's JD, and people around here can vouch for me." "I'm Callie, but I don't know people around here, so them vouching for you doesn't mean much." "He's a good guy," Sammy interjected. "See, I'm a good guy," JD smiled. "Come on." His bottom lip protruded in just the hint of a pout, and desire flicked in my veins again. I wanted to gently nibble on that protruding lip, and then I squeezed my eyes shut, stopping the tempting thoughts. What was wrong with me? Okay, fine, but just lunch. Of course, if it turned into something more, I wasn't sure I would be upset. Sammy finished off the braid and tied it off, and JD stretched out a hand to me. It was large and masculine, as Owen's had been, but there were also calluses. He had probably never had a manicure in his life. I placed my hand in his, enjoying the roughness that rubbed against my smooth skin. Tingles raced up my arm at his touch, sending another flush crawling up my neck. I lowered my eyes, afraid of what he might see in them, but as soon as I was standing, he dropped my hand. My eyes shot to his face, but he was already walking on. Ignoring the empty sensation pulsing through my hand, I hurried to catch up to him. You aren't a vegetarian, are you? JD asked as we strolled past various shops. No, I like to eat. I need the protein, I laughed, because I work out a lot. What do you do? He turned into an eatery on the left side of the street. I kickbox. His eyes widened and a laugh escaped my lips. I was used to that reaction. Though athletic, my 5'7" frame did not scream heavy hitter. I'm sorry, he said, holding his hands up in apology. I don't know many women who kickbox. I don't either, I agreed, though more women were joining my gym every day. But it's the only workout that I have continued for any length of time. I've been training for 10 years. I guess I get bored easily, but it's never the same workout, so it stays fresh. A furtive glance at his well-toned body sent another flame of heat across my face, forcing me to look away. What about you? Do you work out? Mainly running and lifting, but I've been known to hit a bag now and then. Images of JD shirtless flooded my mind. I pictured the two of us in one of the small changing rooms in my gym, icing each other's wounds in between stolen kisses, or crawling into an Epsom salt bath together after a hard workout. My ears burned with heat, and I shook my head to clear it. What was wrong with me? I didn't even know him, and I had just warmed the bed of another man I didn't know. Daniel. He was the reason. His leaving me at the altar had damaged my psyche, and these lustful thoughts must be my way of regaining it. The waitress approached, and I followed her, thankful that JD appeared not to have noticed my face or crimson ears. She led us to an empty table with a bright blue and orange umbrella attached to offer shade. Several similar tables sat throughout the restaurant, each with a different colored umbrella. JD pulled out my chair, and I cocked an eyebrow at him as I sat down, unsure whether to be flattered or offended. I could pull out my own chair, but the gesture had been nice. I picked up the paper menu and wrinkled my forehead. Everything was in Spanish. I have no idea what any of this is. How am I supposed to pick something to eat? Okay, pollo is chicken. I remember that. Thank you, Mrs. Alvarez. So maybe I'll order something with chicken. JD scanned the menu before laying it down. Do you trust me to order for you? Narrowing my eyes at him, I considered his offer. Was he offering because he could sense I had no idea what to order? Or was he being chauvinistic and assuming I couldn't order for myself? I thought you were here on vacation. How do you know so much about the cuisine? He shrugged. I come here every year. My eyebrow inched up my forehead. He must make a lot of money to afford a trip like this every year. While I wasn't poor, most of the money I had spent the last few years had been Daniel's. Even junior partners didn't make as much money as people thought. The realization that I was going to have to cut back on my spending habits when I returned home slapped me in the face. Sure, order whatever you think will be good. I placed the menu back on the table and removed the hat that I had donned after leaving Sammy. I placed it on the empty chair next to me as JD called the waitress over and ordered. Lifting my hair off the back of my sweaty neck, I twisted it up into a roll so the cool breeze could find the spot. With the other hand, I pushed a stray tendril behind my ear until I realized that JD was staring at me. My face flushed and I released my hair. JD dropped his eyes and cleared his throat. It was the first time he had appeared flustered. So, are you seeing that guy from last night again? His question caught me off guard, and I leaned back in the chair and crossed my arms. It appeared I hadn't imagined his interest last night. Were you spying on me? No, just observing. I see guys like him come and go while I'm here every year. I didn't want you to get hurt." "You don't even know me." Defensive walls shot up at his insinuation, and my arms pulled tighter to my chest. "What do you know about how I might get hurt?" JD softened his voice. "I could see the sadness in your eyes last night. I sense that you're dealing with some pain, but guys like that won't make it go away." "Guys like what?" I didn't know why I was arguing with him. I hadn't been that attracted to Owen, but my eyes narrowed to slits anyway as I dared him to continue. "You know the kind I mean." He leaned back, folding his arms across his muscular chest. "Here for a week, hoping for a fling, never gonna call again after that." "Well, how do you know that isn't what I'm looking for?" It was a challenge, and I didn't even know why I was throwing it. He considered me for a long moment. His eyes never wavered from mine. What is he looking at? Frustrated, I broke his gaze and glanced away. He leaned forward, propping his head on folded hands, still never shifting his eyes. "I don't think that's really what you're looking for." I stared down at my wrists as I thought of the night with Brent again. Maybe he's right. I can't say I'm proud of that night, but who could blame me? Still, who I see is none of his business. His words spurred my need to always be right and have the last word, and I raised my head, returning his stare and almost daring him to contradict me. "Well, as a matter of fact, I am seeing Owen again tonight for dinner." Though he couldn't hide the flicker of surprise that flashed across his eyes, he managed to keep his voice even. "Ah, well, I'm sure you can handle yourself, but do remember my advice." Before I could retort, the food arrived. A colorful mix of red, brown, green, and orange tantalized my eyes as the savory smell delighted my nose. My mouth watered, and I grabbed my fork, scooping up a mouthful, but JD's hand stopped my arm before it reached my mouth. "Wait, can we pray over it first?" "Are you serious?" I raised an eyebrow and stared at him. "You pray before you eat?" "Of course. Don't you?" Lifting my chin, I pointed my nose in the air. "I don't pray at all. I don't believe in praying to a God who allows someone to experience intense pain." "But you do believe in God?" I stopped, unsure how to answer his question. My forehead furrowed as I thought. Did I believe in God? "I don't know," I shrugged. "My mom does, and when I was young we went to church." A vague memory of entering a church holding hands with my mother and father before they divorced flashed across my mind. Maybe I used to. "Well, I do believe in God, and I believe everything happens for a reason. I don't know what happened to you, but I do believe that God had a reason for whatever it was." My body tensed as I clenched my fork. "Yeah? A reason to be stood up at the altar?" JD cast his eyes down. "I'm sorry. That had to be painful. But yes, even in a situation like that, I think God has a plan for you." "Well, let's agree to disagree on this point." I shook his hand off my arm and brought the fork back to my mouth. Across from me, JD closed his eyes and bowed his head but remained silent. I opened my mouth to take a bite, then sighed, put my fork down, and closed my eyes as well. "Dear Lord," JD prayed, "thank you for all the blessings you have bestowed upon us. Thank you for this food we are about to eat and for the hands that have prepared it. Thank you for new friendships. And Lord, please allow us to understand your reasoning regarding events that are beyond our control. Amen." "Interesting prayer," I said, cocking my eyebrow at him when he opened his eyes. "Are you hoping that something will be revealed to me that will change my mind about who God is?" The twinkle flared again in his eyes, and his lips formed a teasing smile. "I think it will, in time." "How could you possibly know that? You don't even know me. Why was I even continuing this conversation? I'd heard enough religious mumbo-jumbo from my mother. I didn't need it from a stranger, too. Yet I couldn't muster the desire to leave. Not only was I physically attracted to him, but there was something else about him that intrigued me as well. "Not yet. But I know God, and even though I don't always know the way he works, I have seen people receive various truths from him, and I know he works in mysterious ways that we don't always understand at first." My gaze lingered on him a moment longer as I tried to decide if he were serious or playing me. Deciding it didn't matter for now, I returned my attention to the food and took a bite of the delicious dish. savoring the flavors that exploded in my mouth. I sneaked a glance at JD, curious if he just had good taste or if somehow he knew exactly what I liked. The rest of the meal was finished in a comfortable silence, and after lunch, JD paid for the meal and escorted me back to the hotel. "Thank you for having lunch with me," he said as we reached the front door. "I wish you well on your dinner tonight and the rest of your visit here." He bowed slightly, and before I could respond, he turned and walked back the way we had come, leaving me battling confusion over his baffling behavior.